serving you a dose of wisdom and humor with a dash of radiance. Welcome to Biscuits and Sunshine with your host, Callie and Landra.
Welcome to our podcast. Thanks, y'all, for joining us again. We're so excited to have you here today.
For sure. Makes my heart hella happy to have you here with us. We're recording this from Distant Sport Audio Studios in Athens, Greece. Welcome to episode 7, Epta. Pame. Let's go.
Last week, we talked about the concept of home, how it's more about the people versus the place. Even though people can keep us rooted to a place, that doesn't mean some of us aren't destined to wander the world. And moving away from home has an irrefutable impact on your life experience. We've both made big moves, even before we came to Greece. When did you first move away from home, Landra? Do you remember how you felt?
Yeah, I think the first big move was when I was in high school. I got the wonderful adventure and also opportunity to move to Spain for 1 month with my high school. We each got placed with a different family, and it was more of a cultural immersion. And to be honest, I never felt homesick.
I'm not surprised.
I know what it did. It ignited this sense of wanderlust within me. And I spoke previously about the connection with Latin countries and my Portuguese heritage. So I think there was that. But also it's just wow, there's so much out there. So for me, it became, this sense of adventure. But I will say I've also reflected on the sense because I've always had such a stable home. My parents still have the home. God, I think it's been now 44 years. So, I moved when I was 4 from the first house we lived in. And so I think there's something about that I know I've always had roots and some stability to come back to that probably gave me the confidence to find home wherever I was. And thinking about, other times I moved, I think the next big move after that was college. I was excited because I went to junior college for 2 years. So, I was at that point 20. I was ready to leave my hometown. I was so again, there was that I got to get my own thing going. I moved into transfer dorms with other people that are around the same age as me. So again, that time in your life, it's exploration, excitement. So that's how I felt there. And really, I've never moved back after that. I've come always home to visit my family. But after that, after college, it was moving and finding my first apartment as I was working in the Bay Area. And I talked about previously moving to Argentina, and that was out of the country for 6 months. That too felt very energizing as well. And, there were times that also destabilizing early on when I didn't know anybody. Granted, guys, I'd made this move to Argentina in 2009. So the internet was a thing, but yet you were can I really trust these people that I've made this connection with? And again, there were cell phones, but not smartphones. So it was a little, bit different of a time. And so there was that little bit of nervousness and oh my God, what have I done? And, you get somewhere. I did feel not again, it wasn't a homesick, but it was kind of oh, am I going to like it here? I've signed up for 6 months, Mm-hmm. And so it took a little bit of faith and patience to kind of see how it all played out. And tell me about your experience.
The first time I really moved away from home was when I went to university. But the first time I was aware of a home outside of what my parents built was when my parents brought me to Greece for the first time when I was 13. I think I've told this story before. My mom said I walked around basically for the entire vacation saying, "Thank you for bringing me here," because I felt such an enormous moment of expansion of my life. I realized at 13, home and moving away was something destined for me.
I love that word, expansion.
Yeah. I remember meeting my cousin for the first time thinking, that's my nose on someone else's face halfway around the world. It was I knew in that moment I wanted to move abroad. Clearly, people move for different reasons. Sometimes the decision is activity-based, it's adventure. Sometimes it's job-focused, school-focused, moving with a partner. feel like you've done all of those. Check, check, check.
And the one I didn't mention was moving because I was unhappy
Ugh.
and kind of at a crossroads of like, what the F am I doing with my life? And always had this dream of like, I'll live in a Spanish speaking country and become more fluent. And with the help of friends that were like, yeah, you've been talking about this, just go already. So that was interesting too. I left not from a place of feeling like my most happiest. So that was an interesting little aspect I didn't share, but you reminded me of that.
It's also too when you have friends, it's nice too when you have friends who are like, time to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
You've been saying this. I had a very similar experience. Sometimes, destinations call to you. And maybe it's not quite in focus, but you know that there's something out there. And for whatever reason, you make a move. The decision is never most likely the easiest. There's always some resistance. There's always something that you come up against. I wanted to move to Greece for years, but I let other people's fear, and really my own fear, stop me from making that decision.
What do you mean by other people's fears?
Not my close friends, but I would tell people, I had this dream, I want to move abroad, I want to live in Greece, I want this to be my life. And the questions that I would get in response were always riddled with their own fears. Oh, what will you do for work? How will you make money? What about health insurance? You'd leave your family? Obviously, all very important questions, but because I was unsure of the decision and my ability to make the move, I never heard the questions from a place of, oh, let's figure this out. I only heard, oh, wow, that's so hard. Oh, wow, that's gonna be really difficult. And now, having made the move, I can't imagine my life without it, without this experience. I tell people all the time, the best decision I ever made was to finally follow this dream.
I'm so glad you did, because if you didn't follow your dream, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
And so many layers of gratefulness in making this move.
Absolutely. No, and I think I heard all of the same things as well, too. And how brave of both you and me, as the Greeks would say, bravo, Sue, bravo. No, seriously, because, that's the thing, right? We can get stuck in these fears. I mean, not that we didn't ask ourselves those questions probably anyways, but thanks a lot, dream killers. And that's just, the world is, there's so much scarcity in it, right? And it's just, it's not coming from a place, I don't think they were trying to be detractors or think like, don't do it. But, it was like because it was like their own stuff coming out.
I definitely think that is the case. It's not so much an issue of, I don't believe you can do it, but the advice I'm giving you is not personal to you. It's more reflective of my own feelings. We talk about this a lot just in friendship. This idea that not everyone gives you advice that's meant for you. Because either it worked or it didn't work for them, and they're speaking from a personal perspective without considering your own unique talents or your own unique experience in that.
Yeah, it's funny because I also think too, like, I'll just figure it out.
You also made two very big moves when the world was kind of sort of going to shit, like 2009.
Yep.
And also 2021.
Yep.
So I feel like you really do embody this sort of, I'll just figure it out, it'll be fine.
Well, it makes me laugh. I seriously thought that too in the past. Before, like I said, I just felt like it was in like really just like borderline depressive place. And I just was looking for happiness externally. But also there was some sort of alignment within me too that was kind of calling that I kind of need to listen to that whisper that was in my heart and soul. And it was almost like I just couldn't even think about what the rest of the world was dealing with because I was just so much up in my stuff. And I will say this is not a financial podcast, but I made not a decision most financial people would tell you. I actually pulled money out of my 401k.
Ooh.
Because I was like, you know what? Like, I got to do this. And it was the best investment in me, but not the best for my 401k. But, whatever. It's now or never. Money's still going, the whole thing. You build it back up. You come back. I got another real job in quotation marks. You
made it work.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
Yeah. And it's funny because people are, oh, you're so brave. And I would never say I'm brave. But now with perspective, right? And now the second big move, as you mentioned, during a pandemic, I'm like, yeah, we're brave.
I don't even feel that yet.
Oh,
I wish I could give people an inside look into the dialogue in my brain that I was having with myself, because it was really a now or never. In my mind, I'd been so weak all these years because I hadn't made the move. And so
so
it was like, this
this
was
is
it.
your first, not first step. This is like how I felt in that first step.
Yeah.
It seems like, I mean, it's your experience, but yeah.
That's why we're such good friends. Because you
Aw,
understand me.
I know. I know. Aw. I think making big decisions and having those decisions turn out well gives us the confidence to approach all of life's challenges with a growth mindset. In a way, it's like that saying that people say about, hindsight is 2020 vision. Of course, when you look back, you can like line up all the dots and it all makes sense, usually. But then moving forward, right? It's like feeling your way through the dark. And when I say that it's helpful to have a growth mindset, at least for me, these are the things that I found to be helpful. So, and maybe it's because I'm a communications graduate, I always really find that language is everything. It really shapes actions or behaviors, kind of the way we see the world. But I found, there were moments of frustration or when things seem really hard here meaning Greece. And I should say, my husband, he is Greek American. He speaks Greek. And even he was hitting frustrations and things felt really hard. And at times it was interesting because I was like, well, it's all Greek to me, because literally it was. But I would find myself saying to him, like, babe, it's not hard. It's just new. And for whatever reason, that would just really kind of give us that, like, pick our heads up and have a bigger perspective and go, right. And remember that every time something was new, we were learning and we were growing. That is that growth mindset.
This is what kids do so well. Everything a child learns is new at some point. So it's never about it being hard. It's always about, like, math is hard, yes, but it's also a new concept for you. I feel like being able to change the language is such a make or break sort of mindset as we are adults.
Absolutely. And they even do that with the studies with children, is using language, adding in, instead of saying, I'm not good at math, they say, I'm not good at math yet. So that word yet really kind of adds. So it's like, yeah, I don't know that yet, but I will, right? Because I'm still opening my mind to learning. And that's really a kind of a pillar of having a growth mindset. And also another one is viewing challenges as opportunities. And so, Callie, every time we did something new in Greece, I started joking about, like, we should get a badge. Oh, we learned this badge. We went to this office. Oh, we learned this, and so it's kind of like a way to gamify it and like kind of laugh about stuff. But then also there's like this sense of pride that goes with, I figured something out. And now that we've had new friends moving to Greece, expats from all over the world, we can actually turn around and share our experience to hopefully make it easier for someone else. I know that's been really great for me to do for other people coming behind me.
Yeah. And we've been here, for almost 3 years? There are still challenges.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were just talking before we started recording about the challenges that you guys had this week. And I just got my third and hopefully final number that allows me to work in the country legally. It's just like, it is to be expected.
Yes.
There will always be challenges.
Yes.
And if you approach them as something new and as opportunities to learn, then you're not overcome and overwhelmed by the difficulty.
Another thing I would say is what's been really helpful is to suspend judgment and comparison. Remembering, I have to remind myself that I chose this different place for a reason. So letting each experience play out and knowing that there's going to be a learning or maybe a story to tell. So, like one example, which those of you in America will, and maybe have lived abroad, will definitely love, is Target. I miss Target when I live in Greece. It's like my one-stop shop. It has everything, great prices, stylish things, like you name it. There's nothing like that here. You have to go to your different stores and kind of piece it together. And the quality, sometimes it's great and sometimes not so great. And there's been some great places I found here, but you just don't know where to go when you first move somewhere.
I'm still not sure where to buy light bulbs.
Oh, come on.
I need a very specific type of light bulb that not everyone carries. And that in and of itself is an added frustration to needing to buy light bulbs.
You just don't know where that store is yet.
That's sick.
No, moving to Greece, we basically feel like at times we've started over in many ways. And you have to be ready to continue to grow if that's the route you choose that we have chosen.
I totally agree. I had a friend in university, Cyrus, who always used to say, when you lose in life, don't lose the lesson.
Ooh.
And I would say neither one of us has lost anything, but when you're spending hours at a government office, you can feel like you've lost a lot of time. But when you lose in life, don't lose the lesson. I try to keep that with me. And there are people out there likely contemplating making big decisions or making big moves in the near future. What's some wisdom that we can pass along to them that has helped us?
Patience. Ooh, and that was one thing too. Because this is just so who I am, I told my husband, I'm like, we have to have core values around this move. Humor was one of them because you just have to laugh, right? That's what gets you through. The other thing was patience, for sure. And then that growth mindset of like, it's not hard, it's new. And I think it's like not losing perspective of and taking inventory of all the beautiful moments that are occurring. Because it's so easy. They say that sometimes our minds can be like Velcro to hold on to all the bad things, and Teflon, something nice, beautiful happens, and we just forget about it. Just kind of like, skids off. Yeah. And so, not stopping and it's important to stop and to take inventory. And sometimes write it down, and remember. And so when those days are hard, to remember that you chose this and that like, oh, there's this and there's that. It's really beautiful.
I liked what you said earlier about how you would remind yourself that you made the choice to move here. I think that's very important because a move like that, a big decision, you usually take small parts of it over a long period of time, and they add up to a yes or a no. When you have a bad day for one moment and you question the whole decision, it's nice to remember to say, oh, but when cooler heads prevailed 3 months ago when I decided to move, it was a good choice. It's still a good choice, but in this moment, I'm having a difficult time.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really good conversation to have internally.
Yeah. And I think it's been nice, building this community that we have of chosen people that we brought in and have met along the way. It's like also just being candid about that, and you're not alone in that. And, and I think what's been beautiful is, friends of my husband's that now become my friends and family. They were so kind and like, how is it? How is everything? And, just like essentially like wrapping their arms around us, wanting to make sure that we felt comfortable, which is so beautiful. They're like, don't leave. And I'm like, oh, it felt nice to have a little bit of that community by choice. And then also the community that just kind of we inherited, or I feel like I have inherited through my husband. So Callie, any advice, how you making the big move to Greece, what advice would you give others?
I think anytime you land somewhere new, it's important to document your feelings in those first few days, first few weeks, first few months. My parents always told me, keep a journal when you travel. My parents were avid travelers, and they both kept journals during their travels in the 70s. My dad wrote a book, Confessions of an Ignorant Traveler. And my mom has incredible journals of this experience. I regret the moments when I haven't done this because you get the opportunity, and whether your journal is digital or handwritten, it doesn't really matter, or even voice notes on your phone. There is such beauty and value in the experience you have in a moment. I think you will appreciate being able to go back and re-experience that through the eyes that you had in that moment. You mentioned earlier, hindsight is 20/20. And without a record of your feelings, you apply the hindsight to those experiences and you lose some of the newness, some of the freshness in being in a place for the first time, and experience a sunrise over the Acropolis for the first time, in going to the farmer's market for the first time. You lose the nuances of these experiences when they're new. And so if you write them down, you have a chance to consistently revisit them, and it becomes a practice in presence of mind. Because as you read previous experiences, it also impacts how you approach new things. And I think in my mind, it really reminds you how vital a growth mindset is. So it doesn't matter where you move abroad, you move 20 minutes away, you move to a new city, you move to a different part of the country. Take a record of how you feel, what you're experiencing, what you're doing. Another thing I would say is...
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So I don't know where I picked this up. Maybe somebody had recommended it to me, but another thing that I love so much that I value for my time in South America is I wrote and sent postcards to myself. And I remember one in particular, and maybe that's why it helped me feel brave, is I wrote to myself, like, look how brave you are.
Aww.
You talked about this. You effing did it, girl. You know, like it was like hyping myself up and like loving myself from that place in that moment that my future self got to see. So I have that. And then I recommended that to people just on vacation. It's always just so fun to like, you know, write to yourself. And I did that with my parents when they were here. And it was so sweet. My dad wrote one to himself. It was so, so sweet to see. Yeah, I love it.
What a great memory.
Yeah. So great advice about the writing. What else would you say?
My mom used to say growing up to me that fear of making a decision really is just fear of not being able to handle what comes from that decision. And so for me, I was in my early 20s and I couldn't figure out what route I wanted my life to take. We'd have these big conversations because I did move home. After university, I spent a year working for AmeriCorps and taught inner city speech and debate, which was really cool.
I didn't know this about you. Very cool.
Yeah, and my contract ended.
Where were you? Were you still in Alabama?
I was.
Oh, cool.
My contract ended and I moved home into my parents' house. I had jobs. I had great jobs. Worked for congressmen. Like, I felt like a failure when I moved home. But in living with my parents, we'd have these big conversations. What do I want to do? What do I want my life to look like? And my mom, why are you trying? It's one decision. Yeah, but one decision leads to 5 years later. She said, well, 5 years later is going to come whether you make this decision or not. And in not making a decision.
Wise words.
She's such a wise woman. So in saying fear of making a decision is just fear of not being able to handle what comes, she would always say, you have all the tools you need to handle whatever happens in life. And in some way, she gave me the permission to make big decisions, to make big moves. And even though now I'm living in another country, she might wish she'd never given me that advice. No, she's really happy for me. It allowed me to believe a little in myself. And as I made more decisions, my confidence grew, and I was able to trust my instincts and trust my intuition more.
Another piece of advice that I just remembered by you sharing what you did, Callie, was I think it's important to ground yourself in a routine or a ritual. That really kind of, helped solidify my time here. There were some small ones about like going to like a local cafe, but one I didn't realize it was really helpful, and it wasn't for about maybe a year and a half later, was joining a museum. I know how you feel about museums, so I will not make you join a museum.
Count me out.
But no, and honestly, it was a lovely gift from a friend that befriended that to me for my birthday. And in San Francisco, I would always go to the MoMA. That was something that Alex and I would always have a membership to. And it's just a place I could pop into. And, again, if you have a membership, you don't have to spend all day there. You can just pop in, go to the cafe. And having that here has been another really grounding experience. Plus, there's some contemporary art from around the world, but I've got to know some Greek artists. So that's been really cool and grounding. And it feels like that place that I belong, carving out community.
I think that's a vital piece of advice that helps you not only in moving somewhere new, but anytime you visit somewhere new. I'm obsessed with Samantha Brown. I have been since she was on the Travel Channel.
Ah, love her.
And she talks about every time she travels, she has a ritual, a cup of coffee, going to a bakery and buying a pastry. I'm all about the rituals. Thanks to everyone who's supporting us through the beginning of this new venture. Our families, our friends, our ever-growing tribe of like-minded seekers. As always, a big thank you to Distant Sport Audio as well for the use of this incredible studio.
This week, if there's something you've been struggling to accomplish or maybe contemplating doing, consider adopting a growth mindset to help you get moving. We're rooting for you. Go!
Yay!
Next week, we'll talk about Greek summer, islands, experiences, and tips to make your trip to Greece magical.
If you love what we're serving up, take a second to like and subscribe to this podcast on this platform. Also be sure to follow us on Instagram at Biscuits and Sunshine, all spelled out. We'd also love it if you share the podcast with a friend. This is Biscuits and Sunshine with Callie and Landra.